All right, what's up everybody? Today I want to talk to you about internationalization, or creating a website that can have multiple languages and locales to really show off your content to a variety of global users. And the term internationalization is often seen as I-18N. And the secret behind the shortening of that term is there's 18 letters between the I and the N, and they just get removed and replaced with an 18. So when you see someone talking about I-18N, they're really just talking about internationalization. Now there are a couple of ways to do this with CloudCannon today. You can go into your CloudCannon application, open up the site settings. There's an I-18N page in the build section of your site settings. And you can click this little checkbox that will opt into the internationalization workflow that CloudCannon has set up. And this is great. It will take your site, create a couple of different languages for it based on some data files that exist in your repository, and it will automatically redirect users to the localized version of your site depending on what language preference they have set in their web browser. Another great tool in CloudCannon's arsenal is a tool called Rosie. Now Rosie works very similarly. It's a little bit more powerful. It will take the output of your statically generated site, and again it will post-process it to create internationalized versions of the site. But today I'm going to show you a third option that allows you to edit your internationalized strings inside of the CloudCannon application using 11dy's internationalization plugin. And we're going to do that through the lens of this Taylor Swift Superfan website that I've built. This is a site that has two different languages on it. It's got English and Spanish, and it's a lyrics website. So we got a couple of songs here. But the internationalization piece of this is that we have each website is generated in English and Spanish using the 11dy internationalization plugin. So the internationalization plugin generates links for all of the languages that you are specifying in your site. Every single page on your site will then have an internationalized link. So I can click through to a specific song page, and that will also have a customized link to the Spanish version. And one of the other things here is I built a tiny little web component to highlight when the user's browser language preference doesn't match the language of the page being shown to the user. And you can see the URLs are internationalized as well. If you look up in the URL bar, if we click over to the Spanish version, you can see that the URL changes to include the locale here. And then also the title of the song has been changed to the Spanish version as well. Now the other neat thing here is that all of the content on the page has been internationalized. So this content is actually coming through using CloudCannon's site mounting feature. So we have a banner that's set across all of my different demos. We have a drop down here that shows links to all of the different demos that I've built so far using CloudCannon to show off CloudCannon features. And all of the content inside of this menu has been internationalized as well, but that actually lives in a separate repository. And you can, if you scroll down to the bottom, you also see the links in the footer have been internationalized as well. So the other thing you'll notice is that when you click around on the site, if you are in the Spanish version, you will remain in the Spanish version. All the links are relative to the current language that you're browsing. And if you switch back, all the links will then be to English versions. So we're using the 11dy internationalization plugin to generate the HTML for this site. We have the English version of the website is available by default on sort of the root of the URL structure, and ES exists as the Spanish version. And if you go into the CloudCannon app, the sort of extra benefit that we get now is that we can edit these songs in CloudCannon. So technical and non-technical editors now have access to editing the lyrics of the site in different languages as well. So we have our English version here, we have the title and the lyrics, and we also have the Spanish version here, which has a separate title and also separate Spanish lyrics. And so if we have a mistake here, we can come in and easily edit it. We also have a URL section to sort of link out to streamable versions of the song if you want to play the song. And the nice thing here is that we can extend this and add as many languages as we want, and all of that lyric content and song title content will be internationalized as well. All right, so let's go out to the source code of this site, which links back to the demo that I've already shown. And we're using a package called Rosetta for string transformation. And this is just a tiny general purpose internationalization library. We have a for free locale-aware search, which I think is just an incredible feature that you get for free with page find. So we have page find, if you noticed in the demonstration at the very bottom, you can search for a lyric, but I didn't have to do anything to make sure that the search is segmented across language. So I can search for farm here, and we'll get sort of the index page, which has the title here, and we'll also get the song page. But if I search for a Spanish lyric here, and I search for that, you'll notice that it only shows Spanish pages for the Spanish contextual search, which I think is a great feature. I didn't have to do any extra configuration. It worked automatically off of the document lang attribute that was set on the HTML element for the page. Now, one other thing here is we're using album art from Spotify. We're actually pulling in Open Graph images from Spotify's song pages so that we can show some nice album art here. And this is built with 11d 3.0, which just released in our alpha versions this last week. You can go to the 11d blog and read more about it. I'll link it up in the show notes as well. And maybe one more nice thing that you might have noticed is that on the demo, we have a nice little seasonally appropriate snow web component here. This is called Snowfall. And I'll link that up in the show notes as well. You can add that to your site. So what's the source code look like? It's a pretty standard 11d site. You can see some of the front-end dependencies are linked up here. You can see the back-end dependencies. We're using 11d 3.0, the 11d image plugin to sort of fetch those Open Graph images from Spotify. We're using PageFind for search, and Rosetta, as I mentioned, to internationalize our strings. And then in our configuration file, this entire section is just an 11d image piece. And then sort of the magic gets into, we declare our languages here. These are all the languages that we want to use on our site. We set those languages as an array in our global data, so we can use those in various places throughout our site's code. And then we also add the 11d internationalization plugin here. Now, this 11d.beforeConfig event is a pretty little known event, and this is to sort of work around synchronous versus asynchronous limitations in your 11d config file. So this is only an 11d 3.0 feature, and this is to add asynchronous configuration code inside of a synchronous configuration callback. Now again, we're setting the default language to English here in 11d's internationalization plugin, and this filter here is an I18N filter. So this is a way to translate string content into the final output that goes into the site. And you can see this is a shortcode that will fetch the album art for us as well. It's using 11d's Open Graph API to fetch, again, the URL from Spotify. And that's pretty much it for the configuration file. Next, we can sort of look at the index page, which uses 11d's pagination feature to iterate over the languages that we set in our global data. So that's English and Spanish. And so we're generating two different versions of our home page, one for English and one for Spanish. So now let's look at this internationalization filter. So you can see using Rosetta, you feed it a key that then is a lookup for Rosetta's string library that it knows about. And I've wired this up to two sort of JSON files in global data. You can see one is for English, one is for Spanish, and we have just a bunch of internationalized strings here. And so Rosetta will look those up, but this is the key that we're feeding in the template. So when you see songs here referenced in our heading, that just calls out to the key in our data file, songs. So pretty straightforward. We're iterating here over our song pages that I'll go over next. All right, so the next thing I want to go over is the CloudCannon data files that we're using. And those are markdown files that are in our songs folder. So you can see we kind of have two different songs here and then an 11d data that then adds a tag to every single song in this directory. So let's look at what one of those song data files looks like. And we have our English version, which you can see the title and the lyrics here. If you scroll down, you'll see the Spanish version here, title and lyrics. And then we have our URLs here at the bottom. And that's the same for the other song as well. English, Spanish, and URLs at the bottom. All right, so we have our markdown files. Those are populated into a collection using this tags property here. So we can now iterate over our songs in our songs.liquid template. And you can see that in the pagination here as well. Importantly, in the before callback here, this is a callback that 11d uses to allow folks to modify the pagination data set before it's fed into 11d to generate pages. And I won't go over this code too much, but we're using it here to iterate over the songs. For each individual song, we want to output an English version of the page and a Spanish version of the page. We're iterating over the songs, we're iterating over the languages, we're creating one page for each song and language combination. And one last piece I want to go over here is we have our 11d layout file. This is an 11d internationalization plugin feature that gives you a list of links for the current page in all of the other languages. So we're just iterating over that and showing those. Let me show you what that looks like in the demo. That's this piece right here. So it's also available in English. You can click through there. Also available in Spanish. And if we added more languages to our site, then those links would also be represented here. We could add Spanish, German, whatever you want to add. All right, so that's how you set up an internationalization site using 11D with CloudCannon, while allowing your editing team to come in and edit the internationalized strings as well, right in the CloudCannon app. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any more questions, you can post them in the comments below or just send us a message on social media. Thanks, and keep building for the web.